So the other issue affecting the economy and sipping down to Nigeria is the Trump tariffs. We know that last week we saw it in the price of oil, the talk with Venezuela on the one hand, and then, of course, the one with Iran. So we know that in 2025, President Trump launched the most aggressive trade policy in over a century, raising average effective U.S. tariff from 2.5% to about 17% by the end of the year. This year now, we've been talking about Greenland tariff shock. That's supposed to be on 8 European countries. Mind you, there are also secondary tariffs starting from 1st of February 2026. And then it's to rise to about 25 from the first day in the month of June, unless a deal is reached. That's on the Greenland. They call it trade bazooka. Retaliatory package is going to worth about 90 million euros, talking about the one that affects those 8 European countries. The Canadian oil and energy imports are currently taxed at lower 10% rate. The one with China, obviously, we know that's a big one. And then this latest one also from Iran, a tariff on Iran and any country that does business with Iran. Let's see how this will affect my pocket and your pocket. We have Professor Olabisi Akingugbe, Associate Professor, Purdy Crawford Chair in Business Law at Dalhousie University in Shule School. Dr. Akingugbe, Professor Akingugbe, I beg your pardon. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Nice to join you again.
So we are discussing tariffs again. We thought President Trump was done with us, but obviously not. So when we x-ray this latest one, and the one on the European countries, 8 of them, and the one on Iran, I wonder how you see it affecting us back home here.
Well, thank you very much. It's an interesting time. It's, as you said, almost a year into Trump's presidency, and the chaos that it started with has, in fact, returned. I think there are two major activities from the international trade scene that we need to highlight to really come to the Nigerian context, which is that earlier last week, based on the ongoing protests in Iran, President Trump had gone to his own through social media to post that any country that trades with or conducts business with Iran and that has business with U.S. will be subjected to additional trade tariff of 25%. The second one is the ongoing, really protracted again fight for the takeover, if you like, of Greenland, and which again over the weekend has through his Truth Social come out with the threat of an ultimate 25% tariff on a handful of European countries, initially starting with about 10% though on February 1st. Now, for Nigeria, there's a direct linkage from the Iranian threat if it were to go through, although we haven't seen the flesh of around how that will be implemented. Particularly, what it means is that, as we have discussed in this program, you will recall, Trump eventually settled on a 15% trade tariff for goods that will be coming from the majority of African countries to the U.S. If Trump really were to go ahead with the implementation of the Iranian threats regarding the trade tariff, which he calls, a major issue, then you would see an additional 25% to the 15% that already exists. And that really becomes 40%, which makes it significantly unbearable for a country like Nigeria that only in 2025 signed or renewed its bilateral trade relations with Iran.
So what exactly does this mean? If we're looking at about 40%, does it mean that imports from the U.S. will now get ready to pay about 40% more? Just help us to understand in practical terms.
Thanks. In practical terms, it means that the products that Nigerian businesses that trade with the U.S., right, the taxes they're going to pay, so to say, will rise significantly to about 40%, which makes it really impossible or extremely more expensive to deal with those countries. We have a very significant, they're not not our only trading partners, but we do have a significant level of trading with the US and the West in general. And so, what that means is that we may have a situation where we have a lot of products with nowhere to go if our economic partners are not being diversified beyond the traditional Western states.
So we even last week there was a trade agreement in Europe. I believe they call it MESOR. A new pact that the EU countries, Germany leading the pact, they've come into. So obviously, it's a time of realignment for a lot of countries. But I don't know if I've heard a lot of conversations of such coming from Africa, coming from Nigeria, especially. Have you?
Well, I think we are making good effort. To be honest with you, there is a significant level of geopolitical realignment going on. In fact, last week the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in the U.S. had said, meeting with the Chinese counterpart, that the fast evolving new international economic order calls for realignment of our traditional trade relations. So where you see Canada, for example, breaking away from the U.S. and renewing its commitment with China, Nigeria is also doing the same and not relying on the traditional Western countries. And so, for example, you will see our Minister for Trade and Investment last week was out vigorously talking, and in my view, quite rightly, about the fact that we are not looking as a country to just the traditional Western partners we have again. We are looking to sign new trade agreements, which, as she said, are at different stages with various global South countries, maybe India, South Africa, Brazil, countries in that bucket, but also countries in the Gulf, right? And you will see the president came out of Dubai, I think, was it Dubai or Qatar, over the past 2 weeks, right, with series of agreements, again, buttressing the fact that things have changed and the way trade was conducted over many years has really taken a different turn. And Nigeria, I think, is one of the countries in Africa that is indeed looking to other non-traditional Western partners beyond China.
All right, so talking about that trade I mentioned with European countries, they call it Mercosur, and they have now realigned with countries like Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. But this threats to 8 European countries. How can we expect that to play out in the global trade space?
It's really a tough situation that might escalate a lot of things. I mean, on the heels of what President Trump has threatened, the European Union has urgently, right, called for a meeting, which will hold on Thursday right now. What you see is that European leaders are set to discuss the options that are available to them at that emergency meeting on Thursday. And one of the options that is available is what's called a package of tariffs of about 93 billion euros, which was threatened to really automatically kick in previously before they agreed to the 15% or so with the US in the first initial threat that happened last year. Now, if things don't go the way they want, this will kick in on February 6th. The second option that they have said, which they don't want to use, which has never been used, which when they agreed to use, was not thought that US would be the first, beneficiary of this agreement, is what is called the anti-coercion instrument. And this particular, instrument, colloquially referred to as trade bazooka, could really limit access to public tenders, investments, and banking activity, or restrict trade in services in which the US has a surplus with the European Union, including digital services. So what you see, in the context of this new one is that if it were to go through, there might be a significant escalation of the economic consequences of this across the global space. We trade with Europe. African countries trade with Europe significantly. Of course, this is not for African countries, but its effect over decision making, over the cost of conducting business, the uncertainty that it's, sends the shock throughout the economy will be felt. And businesses will be very, very cautious in the way they make decisions as a result of this, were it to go through and where some other resolution not found, which, as the European Union is saying, their first basis would be to still try to negotiate to avoid this present escalation.
And I think it's tomorrow, it will be exactly a year since President Trump got into office. I don't think anybody will argue with the fact that President Trump has changed the face of the world economy, trading, and and all of that, with all of the visa and immigration papers, strict rules that he's introduced and reintroduced. But when we look at it, what do you see? Is the worst over? Can we or should we expect more?
That's a very interesting question, and I mean it's indeed going to be a year, and I think to say I thought we were going into a period of a little bit of stability, but I think we shouldn't expect any kind of stability. President Trump campaigned on effectively disrupting the neoliberal economic order. He wants to change things, of course, saying, U.S. national security or the economic security is at stake, and so on and so forth. In my view, I think the uncertainty we have seen in the past year is likely going to continue. We have seen it in past weeks with Venezuela, with Iran, with this short, at South Africa, Nigeria was caught in it at some point and is still, engaged in that. So I think uncertainty that arises from all these activities is a significant further setback on economic growth. It will undermine certainly transatlantic relations, but I think all countries by now should know that. And if they're not already preparing, as Nigeria and other countries are doing in the African continent, to truly diversify their economy, then it's getting late for them. Further chaos would emerge, if you ask me, in the already fragile international economic order that's represented in the world trade regime. And I think how that will play out, we really do not know. Certainly, one commodity that has become very expensive to come by in the current economy is trust. And the basis upon which many countries relate is truly that. And if trust is gone, we really, are in for a serious ride over the next 3 years that is left in President Trump's era.
So we know that last year we had an increased intra-African trade. We celebrated that. But what else can the African continent be doing or should be doing at this time amidst all of this chaos, especially initiated by President Donald Trump?
Yeah, thank you. I think that there are at least three things we can say. I always say it's important to be cautious, to not assume, maybe sometimes because we don't know all that is going on, that these countries are not doing anything. But you've highlighted the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and the attempts by several states, including Nigeria, through its guided trade initiative to kick off this agreement. In my view, the African countries have not put their weight enough behind this agreement. I think they have been very limited in how they have engaged with it. And so the first thing that I think needs to be done very seriously is the fact that African countries need to take extremely seriously the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and really go ahead and implement it full force. Number two is that investment into the country, an investment by entrepreneurs within the countries has to increase. A lot of what we are seeing today means that, carrying cash and investment flows outside the country is becoming much more hostile from the various kinds of restrictions that are in place across different parts of the globe today. And so African leaders must really look inwards. And, the attitude that truly just looks around, asking for money, debt is not bad, but asking for debt everywhere should really be cut off significantly, and more investments in the countries that will generate manufacturing jobs, that will generate jobs that will be clean energy driven, has to be very urgently invested in. And I think the third one I would highlight is one that I think is peculiar to Nigeria and some other parts of Africa. The world is moving on seriously on the issues of critical minerals. And this means that, we have a lot of these deposits of very important types of critical minerals all over Nigeria. The efforts the government is making in this administration to ensure that Nigeria is not just exporting primary products as we've always done is very important, but more has to be done to ensure that we climb higher on the value chain, on the global value chain, so that how Nigeria truly capitalizes these would really spread out job creation and make Nigeria much more a contributor to the global value chain on issues of critical minerals.
And now the world, including Nigeria, is meeting at Davos, begins today. What should a country like Nigeria be targeting from such meetings? We have the world meeting there. President Trump is scheduled to talk on Wednesday and all that. But what kind of meetings or audience should the Nigerian team be seeking out at this World Economic Forum?
Yeah, thank you very much. Davos is back on again. And I think you are right. President Trump will be there, but President Trump is not the president of Nigeria, and it's not the economic delegation that we're most concerned with as of today. So I do think that the Nigerian delegation, again, they have always tried, but business leaders will be there from different parts of the world. These are the top class of investors that will be there. And I'm sure the Nigerian delegation, will be out there doing what they do best, which is marketing the country, selling the opportunities that are out there. Nigeria has recently been removed from the gray list. That opens up significant door for businesses to know that the current administration is really extremely serious about what it means in terms of investing in Nigeria. Its stock trading business has gone very well the past year. So they have a lot of tools to go out there and confidently market the fact that Nigeria remains open for business. And I'm deliberate in saying remains open because it's not just opening. It just needs to be put out there in light of new and additional facts as several European countries and otherwise Western countries are closing their own doors. So for me, it will be market Nigeria, get a lot of commitments from investors and drive at those as soon as you're back home.
So much for having to wake up early and join this program. We appreciate it. Associate Professor Pody Crawford Chair in Business Law at Dalhousie University, Professor Olabisi Akingube. Let's take a break now. I do have a short gist for you. I don't know if to tell you now, but let me tell you after the break. Just something to see one of the realities in the Nigerian economy. After the break, please stay with us.